Hello, I'm Tracy Nicholas, and welcome to Folkloring. I am a passionate folklore practitioner, and to me, folkloring is more than just a podcast. It's my commitment to help you connect with your roots and awaken the wisdom within you.
Hello. Before I start this episode, I wanted to jump on quick and share some exciting news with you. My book, Mind Over Magic, is now available for purchase. In it, I talk about our ideas about magic, and I get into some of the science behind what we thought was magic just a couple of decades ago. You can buy the book at folkloringlife.com, and if you would like a personalized dedication, just send me a message and I will make sure that happens. You can also get it in bookstores or on Amazon. If you do get it, it would really help me out if you could leave a review on Amazon. It helps me with visibility, which really helps with sales, and I would truly appreciate it. I would also love to hear any thoughts that you have on the book. If you'd like to continue the conversation about folklore and magic, find me at my school community, Folkloring Life. You can find links for the book, for my community, and a bunch of other stuff on my website, folkloringlife.com. Now, on to the episode. Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Folkloring. And today I'm here with Michelle Heberling, and she is the author of The Guts of Fermentation. And we're going to talk about all things fermenting, maybe a little bit of foraging. But before we get into all of that, first, welcome, Michelle. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Tracy. I'm very excited to be on this podcast and talk folkloring.
Before we start talking about fermentation and all of that good stuff, and get us into our kitchen witch mindset, have you been folkloring lately? And if so, how?
Well, as you know, since I just wrote a book, a lot of my book is about folkloring without saying the words folkloring. It's about communication, it's about knowledge transfer, it's about storytelling. And in fact, I did a keyword search on folkloring, and I actually say the word folkloring several times in the book. I was like, all right, I'm glad I
Interesting.
actually said the word
Yeah, very
because
interesting.
it's kind of I'm hitting this on audience trying to educate people on food sovereignty, on soil health, and our traditions from my great grandparents. And we're losing that. So I'm very excited to be able to talk about it and get that knowledge back out there and start those communications, conversations, and maybe start a movement. We'll see.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that it's so important to connect to our ancestors and to connect to the ways that they lived. And we lose those kinds of stories if we don't actively think about the older ways. And a lot of those, especially when you're talking food ways, that kind of tradition, like those traditions really supported healthy living. And when you think about like eating seasonally and living seasonally, so yeah, that's like the very heart of folkloring. So that's exciting.
Yeah, and piggybacking off of what you just said, uh, the thing we lost, we're losing the folkloring, but what's happening to us as a society is we're getting sicker. We don't have the stories that our great grandparents passed on to us to keep us healthy and safe. And what we've done is we've taken this new approach of, well, forget about all that stuff. Don't even worry about cooking. Faster, quicker, 90 seconds. Let's just get the food on the table and move on. When food really is community and conversation, it's the perfect place to sit down and have a conversation with your family. Really enjoy the food. And we're losing that. So, yeah, I'm hoping some of this, even the health aspect, if you just take a couple of the things I say about fermentation and about food sovereignty, if you take that and incorporate that, that's going to make you healthier.
Yeah, and that's, a lot of the ways that people used to preserve their food was so that they could live through the winter, and we don't have those problems now. You just run to the store and it doesn't matter even what the weather's like because you're going in your car. And even like storage and canning, and fermenting was one of those ways. So I'm excited to talk about that because those practices, along with practices like rotating the foods in your garden and pairing foods, we see that even out in the wild. We see, like, if there's poison ivy somewhere, usually there's, what is it, jewelweed.
Julie, yes.
And you can smash that up and rub it on where if you get brushed with the poison ivy. And so, there's a lot of pairing that we used to know about, and I'm even still learning about that, and in my garden. It's like, oh, you're supposed to plant, beans with whatever you're supposed to plant it with. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Corn
wow,
and
I
squash. So three sisters, but
okay.
I got you. I'm
Thank you.
right with you.
Thank you. Okay, so I do want to hear all about you. Before we do that, though, I'm going to say that the way that I've been folkloring lately is that I have been studying the runes and learning about them and trying to understand them as a whole. And I've been studying the Elder Futhark. So that's been really interesting for me. And it's taking me a while because I'm not great with memorization. And it always is a struggle for me to keep it in my brain, probably because I've got a squirrel brain that's always running around. But that's what I've been doing lately. So it's been fun and relaxing for me to just sort of sit
Fascinating.
with that. Yeah, it's good stuff. And I talked to a woman a while back who she's all about the runes, and she was saying, like, you have to look at more than one aspect of runes. And she gave an example of one that was, I don't remember the name of it, but it was an ox. And it was like, most people are like, oh, that's wealth. Because back in the day, if you had, but she said, no, it is wealth, but it's also that responsibility because you have to take into account that you have to take care of that ox or your sheep or whatever. So it's
Yeah.
it's it's good stuff. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah. I'm going to have to dive into that. You've got me motivated. Got to learn some more about that.
Okay, so let's talk about you. Tell us about who you are, what your path was to get you to this point, and the kind of work that you do.
Well, let's see. That's a lot in one question. We'll start with I come from a technology background where I used to work as a consultant or a glorified road warrior. And I would travel all over the world implementing systems that turn manual processes into electronic processes. And then I would teach the clients, subject matter experts, change management, which was also really hard. So I did that for many years. And while I was traveling, I was amazed at the flavors I was experiencing in the food all over the world. And then I would come back to America and everything tasted flat.
Hmm.
I was like, what is going on? And that was kind of my first little trigger going, something's not right in the United States. And the more I dove into it, the more I realized, uh, I grew up on a farm. We ate what we grew. We had chicken once a week, and that was our chicken. We didn't have chicken three times a meal plus snacks. It's available. Like you made a comment on vegetables, like you can get them anytime you want. You can, but we've lost the flavor because what's happened is the food that is growing now is growing in soil that's been tilled, uh, monocropped, which is where corn is on 100 acres or 300 acres. And we were brought up, and our ancestors were brought up to do companion planting. And back to your point on the three sisters, that's companion planting. The stalks hold up the squash and the beans, and they all work together, and then you harvest it. And today's time, you just go to the grocery store and get your food. So, as I was doing deep dives into that, I kind of got out of the corporate world and started working for myself and started providing food as a caterer. And I've always been one to eat organic food and go to the farms. I was never one to really buy my food at a grocery store. And what I found was that people had forgotten the flavors of food. And they'd be like, Michelle, why does this taste so good? And I'd be like, I don't know. I made a dish for you. It's just, steak, mushrooms, and vegetables. I don't really understand what the big deal is. It's very basic. And
Right.
then I started thinking about it. I'm like, wait a minute. I get my meat from a butcher. I get my vegetables from a farmer. I produce my own desserts. I'm like, wait, there's something here. People are losing what this means. And then as you start looking at that, you start looking at the health crisis. And before I go there, let's talk about Michael Pollan. 30 years ago, Michael Pollan rolled out a book called Omnivore's Dilemma, which was a really enlightening book. And you're like, whoa, that's how animals are taken care of. That's not the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
And he shed this light, and he said one of my favorite quotes of his was, you vote with your fork every day. Every
Yes.
time you eat, you vote with your fork. And voting with your fork was telling corporate America what you're allowing, what you will pay for, what you will eat. Just give it to us. And that's what corporate America did. It's no fault against them. They're only going where the money is.
Right.
If we would have said, no, put the brakes on, we only want organic foods, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in today. And now, when you look at Michael Pollan's quote, it's kind of scary,
Yeah.
because when you go back and you look at our soils and you look at the damage that's been caused, that damage in our, we were like, okay, corporate America, give us food fast. And no one stopped to think, what is this doing to our soil? And what is this doing to our health? And then it was like this wow kind of comment, because um, then you start connecting the dots, soils. And we didn't talk about this until like the 2000s, when we could start looking at, we can really zoom in on slides on a microscope, and you could actually see microbes. Before it was just shapes, but after the like 2005, I think, is when you could start actually accessing really nice microscopes, and you could actually see the microbes. So I did tests. I took soil that was depleted, looked under the microscope. You could hardly see anything moving. And then I took soil that was full of life and looked under the microscope. This life would be from the forest. And it was just crazy, the movement in the slide. So, of course, I had to do a deep dive to that. So, all of that was like, I need to communicate this. I need to share this information, because what heals our soil is going to heal our guts.
Mm.
And they're one and the same. And that was pretty crazy to come up with that, and then to try and find books. There's not any books that actually do this full circle of soil and farming or gardening, preserving, and then eating to heal your gut.
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of books on each individual piece of the pie, but no one's connected them. And that's where I'm excited to share this book, because I've done the full circle, and it's illuminating. I mean, once you understand this, it would be really difficult to then go buy fast food. Or, there's a study. I did a research. Okay, how many people actually cook at home? And it came back 75, 80% of people cook at home. And I'm like, there is no way. But what's in that stat is anybody that buys frozen food or prepackaged foods is still considered make at home. And I only did that test because my son, when he was growing up, he'd come home frustrated because he wouldn't eat at his friend's house because they were having mac and cheese or Chef Boyardee, and his the parents of his friends would be annoyed because my son wouldn't eat their food. And he goes, Mom, it doesn't taste like anything. It's horrible. Now, as an adult, he's grateful that he got the food that I actually made from scratch, and he has a really good diet because of it. So he is kind of what tested me to go, okay, well, I'm not doing mac and cheese, but I will make oven mac and cheese. Absolutely. Just not the boxed.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I went to school, they had like hot lunches, right? But they also had a vending machine that had like Chef Boyardee and stuff. And I was so excited because like my mom, like every meal she cooked, like we rarely ate out. A couple of like birthdays, we would eat out on birthdays.
Right.
And other than that, we really didn't. We didn't get fast food. We didn't get any of that. And so I knew all of my friends were like eating and it was this was middle school. So I had already been through 4 years of like, packed school lunches that my
Yeah,
mom was
yeah.
like, no, this is what you're eating. And so
Well, and just to say, sorry to interrupt, but just to say, our friends thought we were weird because we brought
yeah,
the sack lunches.
yeah, absolutely. And so I was so excited the first time to get like the single serving Chef Boyardee. I was like, "Oh my God, finally." Right? And I had it and I was like, "What? Why do you eat this?" Like I was like, "What is like that doesn't taste like tomato sauce. Like it doesn't taste like and it's oh, it was nasty." And so then I started to have a better appreciation for like real food. And I cook all the time. Like I eat hardly any processed food. So, but people do lose that. And we're in the kind of economy now where even if you're, a couple, like both people need to work. And it's really hard to do from scratch cooking all the time and have a full-time job. And then, you've got activities, if it's after school activities for the kids, it's hard to do. So I understand it and I appreciate that not everybody has the kind of lifestyle that allows for all from scratch cooking. Now, me personally, I do, because I live by myself, I do a lot of batch cooking. And then I
Mm-hmm.
will, I'll make a big old batch of chili and then I'll separate it out into individual servings. And I'll have, three or four things in the freezer that I can sort of rotate around. And so, yeah, and that works for me. And I can do it on the weekend and put it all in the freezer and go from there.
And it feels good, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
It
Yeah, yeah.
feels good to know what you're putting into that container,
Yeah,
and you can enjoy that food, knowing that you had control.
right.
I think we've all lost. There's a lot of losing the control because we're outsourcing it.
Right.
And it's not just outsourcing it to the prepackaged meals you get at the grocery store, but maybe you outsource it to somebody that delivers meals to you.
Right.
I mean, there's so much outsourcing that's happening. And it seems everybody is like, oh, I don't cook. I don't cook. I mean, it's very rare. I'm sitting here talking to you. There's two of us, and we both cook from scratch. It's amazing. I love hearing that. I'd love to hear everybody did that. But you're right, it does take time, and there are tricks. And I'm sure you've come up with a lot of tricks to do batch
And
cooking.
I think that when, we're thinking about folkloring, for me personally, food is love, you know?
Yes.
So I love sharing meals. I love, making stuff and bringing it. Like if I'm gonna go to visit one of my friends, I might be like, "Ooh, I should bring shortbread." So I think that we lose a lot by not cooking because, again, our stories, we tell stories about things that are important to us. So there's a lot of lore around food in general.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're distanced from it, there also is a lot of lore around land, the land we live on, the land we grow our food on. And we talk about, our land spirits and the ancestors that lived on the land before us. And we're losing those stories as well. The more we get disconnected, the
Yes.
more, as you say, we outsource. And
Yeah.
so those stories are important because that's our ancestors, and
Yeah.
that lives through us still. And when we do damage the land and the soil through these aggressive farming strategies that are, just get the most yield that you possibly can and heavily spray it with chemicals, which is not only getting into us, it's killing off the insects, it's killing off, the animals that live in those areas. And when we damage the earth, we damage everything.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people thinks that's abstract and it doesn't really impact them. But I highly recommend, if you want to feel it, go walk in the forest. One of my favorite things to do is take my shoes off in the forest and just stand there and feel. And, you know, there's a magical feeling you get when you're in the forest, and it's energy. And the forest takes care of itself. Look around, look at the duff, look at what's growing around you. Move the leaves out of the way. Look at the white threads. That's the mycelium. That's mushrooms
Right.
that are spreading and decomposing and cleaning the forest. They don't need industrialized intervention. They can take care of themselves naturally if we just listen to them and we allow it. And I think that that's where we've really forgotten and we miss it. I mean, how many people walk in the forest?
Right. It's not,
Right? I
yeah,
mean, it's almost the same question could be, how many people talk to a farmer on a monthly basis? That's kind of the same kind of question. And then how many people make food from scratch? That can fit into that same category. These things we're losing. And if that doesn't sell everyone on food sovereignty and getting back to basics, how about saving money? You can save a ton of money if you ferment your food. Do you know one head of cabbage can cost $6 now? That head of cabbage, you could make coleslaw. Maybe you could get 20 servings of that coleslaw, but within 3 days, it's going to turn to slime
right.
and you have to throw it out. And it's absolutely disgusting. And not only that, coleslaw is not healthy. Coleslaw is loaded with mayonnaise and it's just, it doesn't have any nutritional value. What if you took that same head of cabbage and you fermented it? And when you ferment, you increase the nutritional value of the vegetable. And fermentation, you only need to eat 1 to 2 tablespoons. That's a serving. So that one head of cabbage is now will give you, where your coleslaw only gave you 20 servings, your head of cabbage can give you 120 servings. That's huge because you don't need a lot of it. And then you're eating live food, and then that food is going into your belly. Those microbes are working. And now all of a sudden, you're creating this gut brain axis where your dopamine is getting expanded and you're starting to feel happy. Your brain fog's going away. Your inflammation is decreasing. Those are huge values just by fermenting that one head of cabbage, that one lonely head of cabbage. You can do so much with it to heal your body. So I think that, and it's simple. And the beauty of fermentation is a lot like folkloring. It takes patience and time. You said it's taken a while to learn this new piece of information you're learning in folkloring. That's patience, that's time. And it takes that. And that's what fermentation does. You make a head of cabbage, you can't eat it. I mean, you could eat it immediately, but it'd be salty. But you wait 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, and now all of a sudden you've got something that's absolutely delicious. The first time I made cabbage was actually, we're going to go back in time and I'm going to talk about dial up because I had a head of cabbage. I was buying from a CSA, Community Supported Agriculture. They send you a box of food, and I threw my cabbage away from the week previously. Like, what do I do with this? So here's the AOL, it comes on. And I say, what do I do with the cabbage? And it said ferment it. And I'm like, what is fermentation? What is fermenting? What does that mean? And it said salt, water, and thyme. And you're like, okay, I'm going to try it. So I did the salt, I did the water, cut up my cabbage, stuck it in the jar. And I was really nervous because I'd walk by it and be bubbling. I'm like, I don't know if that's supposed to happen. It's not like we got that much information on AOL dial up. It was a very simple uh, saltwater time, not a lot of information to go on. And I was like, okay, I got to wait 2 weeks, then I can taste it. But do I want to taste it? Because, growing up preserving food, tomatoes, you got to be careful for botulism. So you're like, botulism equals, bubbling. And so this jar is
Right.
bubbling. I'm like, I'm freaking out. What if this is going to make me sick? And so you have to open it every day, give it a little air to breathe. And it was pungent. It would knock me down when I would walk by and smell this cabbage. I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. Finally, I mustered up the courage to take a taste. Yeah, it about knocked my socks off. It was so strong and I was not prepared. Like, all right, it was a teeny tiny, and you can start fermenting. You can start tasting ferments like with a teaspoon and build up to 1 or 2 tablespoons. But I walked away and the flavor was lingering. And I'm like, what is going on here? And I would go back and I would have another little taste. And I did this and I enjoyed this jar of sauerkraut for about a week. And then I started noticing some of my inflammation was disappearing and my brain fog was going away. And I had a little more skip in my walk. It was
Mm-hmm.
pretty incredible. This little jar of cabbage turned into sauerkraut couldn't possibly be the reason why I was feeling the way I was feeling, but it was.
I think the other thing about fermenting is we are so trained that like everything has to be either, vacuum sealed or in the fridge, right? And leaving
Yes,
something out, and even if you're, burping it every day and doing all the right things, it's like we're trained to be like, well, that's going to go bad.
right.
It's hard to get over that mental block that we've been trained, like, oh, put it in the fridge, And it's even like with butter. Like I've got a butter dish and it sits on my counter and it's fine. I've never had it go bad.
Isn't it lovely?
Yeah.
It's
Oh yeah.
smooths very easily.
Yeah. It's the best to not have it be rock hard. I have had it melt in the summer because I don't really use air conditioning. And like I'll pick it up and there'll be a little pool of
A
butter.
mess.
Yeah. But yeah, we are trained to think that way. So let's talk about different types of fermentation. So when you said it's cabbage and salt and water, right? There is a little bit of effort where you kind of you chop it up, but then you like sort of crush it all together, right?
So you don't have to. You don't have to smash it if you don't want to. With cabbage, I like to release the liquid. And so I'll put the salt in with the cabbage and massage it
Hmm.
just to
Hmm.
kind of release the liquid because I'd rather have the liquid come out of the cabbage than add the water to it.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think it tastes better. And in Germany, folkloring here, they will never add water to their sauerkraut. And
Mm.
they do punch it down and make all the water come from the cabbage. And that's how they do their fermentation. But I massage it and I keep an eye on it. If I have to add water, I do. So, yes, there are several ways to ferment, and it depends on the vegetable you're using and what your goal is. So, and in my book, I have it broken out as foods that everyday foods to condiments. Some of your best condiments are fermented to bases for soups, like miso is heavenly and so easy to make. So you just have to know whichever vegetable you're using, the salt ratio is like the most critical piece.
Okay.
Once you know the salt ratio, and then you make sure you add the right amount of water, you're fermenting. And you're fermenting. I can make a jar of ferment, a gallon jar of ferment in 5 minutes. And then I leave it to sit for 2 weeks. And then I've got fermented carrots. And it's heavenly. It is so yummy to just grab a carrot or a pickle. I also ferment instead of, use pickling salt. I don't use that. You can use vinegar, but it's not true. It's not real fermentation, because with vinegar, you still have to sterilize and have to seal the jars by canning. Whereas when you ferment, those microbes are working and building and creating, and they keep the bad stuff away. So you have liquids like wine and beer and kombucha and June. They take different steps, different processes to ferment. But the thing I talk about is you don't just want sauerkraut. You want a mixture. And I try to teach people how to increase the diversity of vegetables, fruits, and nuts in their diet. I tell everybody, the goal is 30 a week. If you can eat 30 types of greens, add the nuts, add the seeds, you are going to be feeding your gut microbes what they need. A thing that I learned that I thought was a little fascinating was, if, and this is more for like the younger generation, really, if you drink and you're hungover, let's say you wake up and you got a bit of a headache, you're not dehydrated. You've killed your microbes.
Mm.
The beauty is, though, those microbes will multiply and grow inside your body within 3 days. You can completely transform your body in 2 weeks by doing my program. Completely. No inflammation, no pain. I helped a gentleman that had Lyme disease, which there's not a cure for it, get out of bed and start living his life by following my program. That to me is mind blowing. Why isn't this out and published, and why aren't our medical professionals pushing this? We all need to eat live food. Food allergies, food tolerances. A lot of what I discovered in the research of my book, a lot of people say oh yeah, I have to eat gluten-free, or nightshades are a problem for me. But what I found, it's not the vegetable. It's how that vegetable was processed. What did it grow in? What kind of chemicals touched it? Farmers buy pesticides, buy herbicides, buy inputs. Inputs are supposed to improve the soil. But if you look under a microscope, those inputs are not alive. All you're doing is giving your soil a band-aid to grow that crop's food.
You were talking earlier about how you shop with a co-op, or you go to
Yeah.
the farms, and so you know where your food is coming from. Now, not
Yes.
everybody can do that, but let's talk a little bit about why you do those things and you don't just simply buy from the grocery store, even if you can buy organic at the grocery store, right? Like, why do you take those extra steps to do that?
That's a beautiful question, and I'm so glad you asked it. Even the organic vegetables in the grocery stores have had damage to the microbes on those vegetables, because we live in a culture where everything's been sterilized. Everything has to be sterilized. And there is a ton of microbes in the air, on your skin, in your mouth, in your gut. These microbes, Mother Nature created these microbes to heal us. It's not all bad, and there was a study, I don't remember the guy's name, Bent Camp versus, oh my gosh, I don't remember the name, back in the 1700s, where it was like, we have to kill the microbes. Microbes are bad. Don't ever have microbes on your food. And we followed that tradition ever since. But my question is, what if we were wrong?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
what if by sterilizing, we've now made the bad microbes in our belly produce all this awful stuff in our bodies? And that's kind of what's happened. And so why do I grow my own vegetables or I buy from farmers? Because I want the microbes on the food. Those microbes are wonderful. And you can do this. You can put those microbes in, you can grow your own food if you have like a little bit of land or pots, but you can grow microbes by capturing indigenous microorganisms from the forest and bringing them to your home and adding brown sugar to them to shelf stable it. And then you can take that. It's 1 part microorganisms to 1,000 parts water. So it only takes a little bit of the microbes, and you can increase your soil tenfold. And you can do it within 3 days. It's incredible. I've done the test. I have tested my soil, put it on a little slide, look under the microscope, see there's not a lot of life, add the microbes, and then watch it just blow up. And why do we want to do that? What's the big deal of microbes, right? The big deal of microbes, microorganisms, they will keep the bad bugs away. They hold water. They give nutrients to all the plants and vegetables and trees. And in turn, that gives us those vegetables and nutrients. I never skin a carrot. I never skin a potato. I think it's really important to always eat the skins and the tips because I feel that's where all the nutrients live. And if you take that food that you know where it's grown and then you ferment it, you've just enhanced those nutrients like you wouldn't believe. And I talk about it, and I actually have 127 recipes in my book, and each one has the nutrient factor before you ferment and then after you ferment to see the differences. It's astronomical.
That's amazing.
It's astronomical how different I mean, we just need to eat what Mother Nature has provided us. When you look at our food system, we have a group of corporations that run our food system that decide what crops will be grown. We don't have that control. Sorghum, when's the last time you had sorghum? Quinoa is one that's slowly disappearing because it doesn't make the corporations enough money. They make a ton of money off of corn and rice and wheat, and that's what they're going to make. But there are so many different plants you can grow, and I highly recommend you buy your seeds from heirlooms so that you can carry on that tradition. Another thing I do that I think is really fun is I don't grow annuals, I grow perennials. So it's not as much work.
Mm-hmm.
Egyptian onions, those are onions. Most people grow their onions. Egyptian onions are so flavorful. And you plant them once, you have onions for the rest of your life.
Interesting.
They grow into the top. They create the bulbs on the top of the stem, on the top of the greens.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they're ready, when it's time, they just fall over and then they produce more onions.
Well, and I think it's interesting when you're talking about sort of the diversity of food, a
Uh-huh.
lot of that is also not just will it make them money, but how long will it be sellable for? And so they breed like apples, for example. They breed those not for the flavor or the nutritional value. They breed them because they're big and they're red and they look pretty and they last uh, longer than some of the other kinds of varieties. But it's like chewing through leather to get to styrofoam when you eat one of them. And we do see a little bit of diversity in apples, and maybe it's just because I'm in an area where there are a lot of apple orchards, but it's about how they can make them more sellable. The longer something lasts, even if it's losing nutritional value, if it looks okay, then people will buy it. And so I think that that's part of the lack of diversity in our food is just that they have gone about the business of figuring all of that out, and that's what we get then. We don't get like, hey, here's the most delicious apple you've ever had. It's like, hey, here's the one that'll stay good on the shelf the longest.
Yeah, it's really sad. Weight is another one of those categories. How much does it weigh? How much money can they make? And they're always following the money.
Right.
They're in the business of making money. So what is going to produce and give the highest yield as an apple? It's really sad. Another thing I ask people to do as an exercise just to bring awareness is when you're standing in that grocery line, count how many things that are in your basket that are in plastic.
Mm-hmm.
And then look at the people in front of you, count theirs, and look at the people behind you. And then magnify, multiply that by how many people are in your town. And it just goes from there, and then your state, and then your country. We live in a society that is all about pre-packaged shelf life. It's going to last longer than the food inside it. And we can take that back. We can take that back by asking those hard questions. Where did this come from? Where did you grow it? What kind of inputs did you put in your soil? How far did it travel? You could ask, what was in that soil? Did you use indigenous microorganisms, or did you use inputs? If we're asking the questions, we're going to annoy the living daylights out of the people you're asking, but that's the conversations we need to have to start building a movement and taking back our food, which then takes back our health. Our crisis, our health crisis, when I was a little girl, we had, and that was in the 1960s, diabetes was at 3% of the population. And do you know what it is now?
I do not.
80% of the population is diabetic. And that's a problem. That's bad.
That's a big problem.
That's scary. And so we have to ask ourselves, it's been 50 years that we've watched this change. We've watched it go from everybody having gardens and sharing with their neighbors to having TVs with TV dinners in front of the TV. And now we're not as mobile as we used to be, to now, everything's prepackaged. That was 50 years that this has changed. What is our next 50 years going to be like?
Right. Well, and the other thing too is the way that food packaging works now is they only have to tell you about things that they intended to be an ingredient. So when I
Yes.
look at something like corn syrup, right? And that's in, soda, and that's in a million things, right? And
Yeah.
so people are eating it all the time. What they don't tell you is the way that they make that is they first start by soaking the corn for, I don't know how long it's for, but for days,
Yeah.
in a mixture of water and sulfites. And sulfites are a preservative. And I only know this because I happen to be allergic to sulfites. And so I had to figure it out over time. So I don't eat, cane sugar, because cane sugar is bleached with sulfites to make it
Oh
white,
yeah.
because it wouldn't be white.
Oh yeah.
And so there's a lot of things, but they don't have to, it doesn't matter how much of the sulfites are left in the corn syrup. If they tested it and it was, 3% or 8% or whatever percentage it is, they don't have to say that because they don't intend that as an ingredient, even if it's in there. And
Yeah.
additionally, if they substitute an ingredient in processed food, they don't have to tell you if it's a temporary substitution. They can put anything in there, they can replace any ingredient, and there is no definition of how long temporary is. It's not like we're going to put it in there for a week.
Oh,
It's not like we're going to be manufacturing this for the next year. It doesn't matter. They can just say, we're not telling them because we're at some point we're going to go back to the old ingredient. And so it's so dangerous for people with allergies, of course. It's just like they just don't really tell us what is in that processed food. And so you don't really know what you're eating. And as you say, it's not living food. It doesn't have the same microbes, but But yeah, so there's a lot of different ways that we don't know what we're eating. And again, that distances us from our ancestral history. It's not the
Yes.
way that it's not the way that we're built, that we've evolved to eat. And it distances us from our land, and it's such an unhealthy way to eat. But so many people, particularly people in like food deserts, right? Like they have to go to the mini mart to get anything to eat. They have to get fast food because it's not available to them around where they live, which is just terrible.
Yeah, it really is scary. I think we need to get back to looking at our roots, where we live. We we are provided for if we just learn about what's growing there.
Oh, there's so many plants. I remember I was so upset about this. There was a massive burdock plant that was back like in my alley. And it was like just this little patch of land that was like on my land. And the neighbors were putting in a fence. And they thought they were being like great guys and they pulled it
Let
out.
us help you with that weed.
Exactly. And you see like purslane.
Oh, I love purslane.
Yeah, it grows
Yeah.
all over the place. But people
Yeah.
don't know. And so when people are wanting to connect and they want to get out in the forest, and I will have a disclaimer, depends on where you are, because you can't just go to the forest preserve and start gathering stuff up because that is illegal in many, many places. So do not do
Yes.
that. But what should people like how do they figure out whether or not they can forage? I think a lot of people are scared to forage even though that was such a common practice.
Well, first of all, I highly recommend if you're going to forage, you go with someone knowledgeable.
Mhm.
And people that are knowledgeable know the rules of that area. And it's really important because not only are there poisonous mushrooms, not a lot of poisonous mushrooms, but the ones that are poisonous are deathly. There are more plants that are poisonous than there are mushrooms that are poisonous. So you have to really know how to identify it. And so there are a lot of people that will take you foraging that are certified and will steer you the right direction, and you can learn everything you possibly can from them. I take people foraging all the time. And granted, I live in Northern California and I have an assortment of forests that I can hit, but I also know what ones have to take a permit and the limits to what you can gather.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to make sure that somebody's knowledgeable, and also, buy some books. There was a lady on Survivor, not Survivor, one of those reality shows that you had to live on the land. I don't remember the name of it, but it was fascinating. She was able to take care of wounds and eat food because she was so knowledgeable about the plants in that area. And she came out with a book, and I have it, but off the top of my head, I don't remember the name. But there are a lot of books out there. If you want to get astute and read about it, I highly recommend you do that. Don't trust AI. Don't
No.
trust your phone app, please. That is not a way to learn. You can verify. Don't ask a group chat, hey, is this mushroom poisonous? Don't ever trust anything online. Definitely learn about it, join groups. I go to mushroom camp every year. I'll hit more than one mushroom camp because I love it so much. I join meetups where people talk about different plant life, and what is this plant? And then you learn about it and you understand it, and then you can go from there. So I think that's really important. It's a great question.
That's how we used to learn, right? Knowledge was
Yeah.
passed from person to person. And I think that it's a better way. And I mean, the same is true with our folklore, right? We used to have storytellers that would go around and or maybe you'd tell a story like within your village. And that's how we shared our stories. And it's the same with our practices. And this is why, people don't know how to forage. People don't know how to ferment because we don't pass that knowledge on person to person. And it's like, yeah, you can go study up on it and you can find the experts. And like at the Park District in Chicago, they sometimes do like traditional skills classes. So you can find those things if you're in an area that is, like I'm in Chicago. So it's obviously there's a lot more available to me than it would be if I lived in a really rural setting. But I might learn it from the farmer down the road or something like that. But that's like once there got to be experts, oh, you don't have to cook that. We're going to give you this prepackaged meal and you can just heat it up because the experts have nutritionally balanced it,
Oh
and
yeah.
yeah, and so I think that
That industrialized food is scary.
yeah,
It
and I
really
think yeah,
is.
taking
Yeah.
back that and what I love about it when I think about like personal folklore, family folklore, like I have the knife that I first started like the first time I was in the kitchen with my mom, and it's like this tiny little knife. It's like, 3, 4 inches, like, and it's a baby knife. And like now I like a really big knife. Like I've got a massive knife, but I still got this tiny, it's a paring knife that I used when I was a little kid. It was like the first time my mom trusted me with a knife. It was just this tiny little knife. And, it's gotten smaller over the years from sharpening it and all of that. But I love it. And so cooking and fermenting and foraging are all stories that you have now. If you're just out there with an app, maybe the only story you get is I made myself sick as a dog because I misidentified this particular plant. So in the springtime, I gather up the fiddleheads because I've got a bunch of ferns that are out there. And I talked about this already, but if you're a first time listener, fiddleheads are the tops of ferns that are still, have not yet unfurled when they first pop up in the spring, and they're delicious. Like you can saute them. You have to cook them. You can't eat them raw, but
Right.
you can parboil them and put them in a soup or whatever. And they're somewhere between like asparagus and green beans. It's like a combination, that flavor. But I was scared for the longest time because I was like, well, what if this isn't the right kind of fern? So when they started coming up a couple years back, I was like, I'm going to figure this out, right? And so happily, I have the right kind of fern. And the way that you can tell that it is not the right kind of fern is that it'll have these little tiny hair-like things on it. And the ones that are edible are smooth, right? On the
Yeah.
stem that is still all
Yes.
furled
Perfect.
up. Yeah. But I didn't for a number of years because I was just like, I don't have time to figure that out. And then when I did, I was like, oh my God. And the other thing that you learn while you're learning about foraging is how much you can take because you can't just like whack down a whole plant. You have to do it sustainably so those plants continue to thrive. And
Right.
so, I had to pay attention to how many off of each plant, because like a bunch come up, there's like
Oh yeah.
15 or 20 of those little heads. But I had to be very careful of balancing how many of them I would take on any given day. And like for those, I went out there every day for like a week and a half because every day new ones would come up. And like there are ways that you forage that you really need to learn about other than just, going out and pulling up some plant from its roots. Like there's lots of
Right.
different things that you have to be cautious of.
And I think that you know, part of that is learning about the area that you're in. And one way to really learn about the area that you're in is not to forage, is to take pictures. Take pictures of the top side, the side, look inside the stem, look at the plant, take a picture, and then go home and study it and do one plant at a time.
Right.
That's how I learned about mushroom foraging, one mushroom at a time. And I learned it as far as I possibly could go before ever doing a second mushroom. I had to know that mushroom inside and out to satisfy my own curiosity. And you do the same thing with plants because there are similar traits that a plant and a mushroom would have that if you don't know how to look at it, like people will say, "What is this, Michelle?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I need to see the bottom. I need to see the stem. I need to see the roots. How did it grow? Is it bulbous? Does it have a milky substance when I touch it? Does it turn purple?" There are so many questions around how to identify something. Does it have long veins in the plant leaf, or is it short? Is it ridged? Does it hurt when you touch it? There are so many different questions you've got to ask. And so the first thing is to start just taking pictures, get to know your area, learn about those plants, look them up, and then ask some experts.
Right. And the other thing is you also need to know when you can harvest different things.
Yeah,
With my fiddleheads, like they have to still be tightly curled or
right,
you can't. And
right.
that like when I think about like puffball mushrooms, right? So like the only mushroom I feel confident in actually foraging, because you can't mistake that for anything else.
Nope. It's so exciting to find a soccer
Oh
ball on your
my
field.
God. But if you find it and you cut it open and it's not purely white, then it's gone past its date and it won't be good. So there's a lot to know about foraging, although it's very satisfying if you do figure it out and when you find something out in the wild and you're like, it's so exciting.
Yeah. And one thing I do in the wild, and I touched on a little bit, but I'm going to touch on a little bit more because it's super fun to do, is to harvest indigenous microorganisms.
Hmm.
What is that, right? It's kind of
Yeah,
a crazy thing to say. You basically cook rice, you take it out into a forest or the woods, you find some leaf litter that's got a little bit of mycelium on it. You put a basket of this rice on it, put another container over the top, just so critters don't eat the rice. Leave it sit for 5 days, come back, and you will have just colonized microorganisms because the microorganisms chose to join your rice bowl.
hmm.
And that does not hurt the forest. That is extending the microbial life into other areas by doing that. It's a very exciting thing. Just like foraging for mushrooms, people will say, "Oh, don't do that. You can't take all those mushrooms." Well, if you know foraging, you're going to know that when you see a mushroom, that's the last part of their life. That's like the fruit,
Right.
and it is releasing spores, and those spores are going out into the forest to grow more mushrooms for you. And so you're not hurting the forest by doing that. But going back to responsibility, where do you walk in the forest? The leave no trace is real, not just with packaging and food, but with your footsteps. Are you going to damage the forest by walking through it, moving things out of its way? Because there's a lot of life forms that live in there that do not want the disruption.
Right.
So you have to be aware of that. And it's really important to really know the rules.
Now, we also talked the other day about how when you are foraging, that one practice that I think is important that a lot of people don't do is thanking the land or the sea. And I think that that is so important because it makes you mindful of your connection to the land, your connection to where you are right now, and also it keeps you mindful of the practices that support the land or the sea continuing to be able to produce the bounty that it's sharing with us. And that to me is like the epitome of folkloring, right? You're out there and you're doing that and you're doing a practice that you've learned from another human. And then you take time to say, I am connected to this land. I am connected to these plants. And I think that keeps you mindful of good practice. It keeps you mindful of that feeling of gratitude that We take our food, like we're so removed from the processing of food. I think most people would not be able to like kill their own chicken, right?
Right.
Because we don't do that. That it comes already plucked without a head and without feet. And we're not connected to that in a way that reminds us to be grateful when we're getting all of our food prepackaged and processed and all like cut up and like all of the things that we do to make it convenient for us. It takes away. And I think that, being able to thank the land for giving all of those things, giving us the microbes and the plants and that good health that is going to be our gut health is a really important step.
Yeah. And I have frameworks in my book that you can read up on, and one of them is showing gratitude. I not only thank the land when I'm foraging, but also when I grow food, I thank the land. I think the place, I think the rain. It's raining today, and I was so blessed that it's raining. But when I make fermented foods, I I give a blessing to the food. I say thank you. Please provide the microbes that will help heal my belly. And I think gratitude for the food that you're eating is really important.
Now, the thing that we didn't talk about is lacto fermentation.
Yeah. What do you want to know?
How do people do it?
Well, lacto fermentation, if you are making cheese, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to do with milk that's almost ready to expire. Oh my gosh. Add a little lemon juice to it, let it curdle, it strains, and you have mozzarella. It's that magical. Making yogurt, same kind of thing. You you got to put a little extra yogurt into it. You can't just start yogurt from nothing. You've got to use some yogurt that doesn't have any flavoring in it and add it, and then you can sit it in your oven and let it sit there overnight. You've just made yogurt. It's a great way to make fresh yogurt without costing a fortune. um, let's see, lacto fermentation is so many things. And again, my book has 127 recipes of so many different types of ferment. We could also talk miso, and we could talk you can make carrot miso, which only takes 2 weeks, and it has protein in it, and it's a good protein source. You can make beverages. Kvass is an amazing ferment, and it's just beet juice.
Oh,
A
okay.
lot of what I do is I'll use a brine from another ferment to be my starter culture for whatever it is I'm making. Sourdough bread is a ferment. It doesn't give you the microbes because you cook it, it's alive. That's one thing I should talk about. The uh the difference between canning and fermentation. Canning, you have to seal the jars, which means it's heat induced.
Right.
Fermentation, you don't seal anything, there's no heat. And so the microbes are there. So that's a very different process in processing foods. Um, your miso, if you wanted to make, I ferment all my beans,
Okay.
not just for miso. I just want easier digestion. So fermentation is a way of starting the decomposition process of that food so it digests in your belly a lot easier. You
Okay.
also don't have any gas if you ferment. So if you put garbanzo beans or black beans on a counter after you've cooked them with a little bit of salt, a little bit of water, let them ferment, you've got a beautiful bean dish that you can make, and you won't be farting. So it's kind of cool. That's something we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about poop. Can I talk about that real quick?
Please talk about poop.
That's one of my favorite things to talk about. That is our best information on how our body is doing is based on the poop that you have. And there's so much to tell you. There's a Bristol chart that was created back in the 1700s that identifies the different types of poop, and you fit in there each day. But also transient time, how long it takes for the food to go through your body, is important to know. And in my book, I tell you, how to use a beet to know that. The color, uh, is it a dark brown? Is it a light color? Those are huge indicators as to what's going on in your belly. The smell. Uh, um, let's see, what didn't I say? Does it float or does it sink?
Right.
All of these things, I strongly recommend. Part of my gutsy reset is to keep a poop log of your poop so that you know what's going on. So when you go see your doctor, you can say, look, I've had a Bristol chart number 4 for 3 days, and then all of a sudden I'm to a 1, and it's pebbles, and I don't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I ate. If
Mm-hmm.
you log that stuff, you've got true information to give your doctor. Your doctor's not going to know what's going on. There is not a test on this planet you can do to know how your microbes are working other than the poop that you see.
I will tell you this though. When I do eat beets, I
Yeah.
will put a post-it note up in the bathroom across from the toilet that says, "You're not dying. You ate beets yesterday."
That's awesome. Yes. And that really is important. If you don't take a quick glance, if it's red and you haven't eaten beets, that's a big problem to go see a doctor, go to the
Right.
hospital immediately.
Yeah.
And um, we need to take back control of our bodies
Mm-hmm.
and know what's going on with it just by the food that we eat.
Right.
We can do that.
Okay, well, I think that we're gonna wrap it up with the poop conversation.
Woohoo! What a way to end a conversation.
So how can people find you, your book, the work that you've done?
Thank you for asking. You can find me on the guts of fermentation.com. That's a great way to ping me. I have a lot of information on that website. So go check it out.
Perfect, thank you. So do you have any final thoughts for people, preferably not poop related?
Oh, darn. Okay. So any other thoughts? Please start asking the questions. Where is your food coming from? Please try, if you don't want to make your fermented food, buy it. It's not going to be as good. It's going to be a little more on the harsher side, but try eating some fermented foods and then expand out and start making it. And you'll be surprised how much money you will save,
Hmm.
and you'll take back your food.
Sure. That's great. Thank you for that. And thank you for taking the time to chat with me today. This was really interesting.
Thank you, Tracy. It was fun to chat.
As always, thank you for listening to Folkloring. If you have any questions or comments or would like to suggest a topic for a future episode, please email us at folkloringpod@gmail.com or message us on Blue Sky, Facebook, or Instagram. Other places you can find me are at the Folklore Podcast as the theater, film, and storytellers correspondent, or creating folklore-inspired games at madmenandheroes.com. Stay curious, stay connected, and keep the traditions alive. And I hope that wherever you are, folklore is making your life more magical.